historicity of Vraj, as I said, that it was recreated and resurrected by Vrajanav under the guidance of Parikshit and Maharishi Shandilya, and with also encouragement from Samrat Yudhishthir. Mathura Mandal, for that matter, saw a lot of effect of Buddhism and Jainism, and we can see from the history today what is available. If you go to the Mathura State Museum, there are 70% of the inventory of Mathura State Museum is either Buddhist or Jain, sculptures. So, and the reason behind this is historically Gautam Buddha with his disciples Kattayan and Upagupta had planted Buddhism in this land. The first Tirthankara, Rishabhnath, practiced Jainism himself. He came here himself, just like Buddha, in the Vraj Mandal. And the 22nd Tirthankara, Neminath, was born in Vraj. Mathura, of course, because of all these reasons, the Buddhists also took to the sculpting to create various, Buddha statues. And even today, when the Yamuna flows, it creates mounds. Tila banate hai wo. वहाँ पे वो उसको मथुरा में they call it tila. So there are a lot of tilas even available today which are not even excavated by ASI. And if you excavate these tilas, then obviously you can understand we will get hold of many other historical artifacts as well. And emergence or the presence of so much of inventory in terms of sculpting obviously points to the fact that Mathura did become the epicenter of sculpting. Vraj Mandal, over history, over the last 2,000 or 3,000 years, I would say, has been nurtured by the Shungas, the Shakas, the Mauryas, the Guptas, and the Kushanas over the centuries. And that is why the famous headless torso statue of the great Kushan king Kanishka is still available in the Mathura State Museum. So, Mathura State Museum, and somebody is going to Mathura, should always pay a visit to Mathura State Museum. This entire the importance of this land can be easily understood by the fact that many travelers, eminent travelers, Megasthenes, Giwensang, Fayen, European travelers like Tavernier have visited and left account of and vivid and detailed accounts of the various temples, the practices which are available over a period of time which was practiced over by the people of Mathura or Vraj Mandal for that matter on those days. The land has been plundered by the Huns. They were the first to plunder it around early 7th century. Ghaznis, Khiljis, Lodhis, and Mughals. And the later, apart from Huns, I think I don't need to tell anybody, Islamic iconoclasm, genocide. The descriptions which are available in the Persian and Arabic text are unimaginable. The kind of genocide they have perpetrated, the kind of destruction they have unleashed on this Punya Bhumi is phenomenal. And what we have lost can only be seen by the fact that what is remains in the Mathura State Museum is reflection of what was there and what has been lost over a period of time. Then after all these iconoclasm effects, when Mathura Mandal was actually destroyed, it was into ruins, into jungles, came Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu during the peak of Bhakti movement in 15th century or early 16th century. And with his 6 Goswamis who recreated and resurrected, as a part of, during this Bhakti movement period, the entire Vraj Mandal for that matter, they went on a spree to locate those places. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is considered as a reincarnation of Radha and Krishna combined, went on a spree to locate those deities, went on a spree to locate those key Leela Sthalis, resurrect the entire place, write the Vaishnav history, create a lot of text, get the people into the fold of Vaishnavism, revive Sanatan Dharma for that matter, and their contributions to Sanatan Dharma historically at a time when India was seeing the peak of Islamic iconoclasm as well as Islamic onslaught and people who have been converted at the behest of swords, they actually turned the tide around. The land has been visited by the greats of Vallabhacharya, Madhavacharya, Mirabai, Surdas, and many other saints. And even today, the Vrindavan town has the same temple, small temple, where Mirabai used to stay. Giri Govardhan has a place called, Parsoli, where the Samadhi of Surdas is there. Similarly, Vallabhacharya, Madhavacharya, they all came in over here numerous times, particularly Vallabhacharya. So we will now come into a very, very interesting story, the story of Sapta Devale. So Sapta Devale, Sapta means seven, and as you can see, the seven temples, the name of the seven temples I have mentioned. So this is the first and the key temple, the Govind Dev Ji temple. Then these are all in Vrindavan city, okay, in the old Vrindavan. And what classic architecture? Gopinath Ji temple and Madan Mohan Ji temple. So if you closely see it, I have mentioned the face, the torso, and the feet. These deities, these are the original deities, the 5,000-year-old deities, and they're made up of stones which are not available in today's art. It is called Vajrakeet, and the name of the stone from which it was sculpted. And these stones, because of the speciality of these stones, which obviously this stone is not found in our on our planet Earth anymore, these deities look equally opulent even today, equally glazing, shining, and opulent even after 5,000 years. Not a single sign of wear and tear. And each of these temples have a wonderful history associated with them. And if you visit this structure physically, you will understand what I am talking about. And then there are the four other key temples in Vraj Mandal of Sapta Devala: Radha Damodar Temple, Gokulananda Temple, Radha Raman Temple, and Radha Shyam Sundar Temple. So it's a huge history, but in the interest of time, I will limit my discussion to these three temples. And the story goes that how these deities were created. It's important to mention this story over here, which comes from Srimad Bhagavat Mahapuran again. The 13-year-old Vajranav, after hearing the description of Sri Krishna, started sculpting three deities of Sri Krishna which would resemble him. I mean, he did not plan to create all the three deities. He wanted to create only one deity, but it so happened that when the first deity was made, his mother Usha told him that, it resembles his feet. So this was the deity which came up, Madan Mohanji or Madan Gopal as we know him. Then that second deity which he created, since it did not resemble Gopinathji, came up. A very beautiful deity. This is currently located in Purani Basti region of Jaipur city. And when Usha looked at it, she told that it matches the torso of Sri Krishna. And then finally Govind Dev Ji deity came up. And once this was created, it is mentioned that Usha, brought down her ghungat out of respect, because the deity's face was exactly how Sri Krishna looked. So it is believed in Gauriya Vaishnavism that Vaishnav Tattva, that if you visit or have a darshan of all these three deities in one single day, in a day, you have a Purna darshan of Sri Krishna. These deities were, as I said, the temple started coming up post 1570, because in 1570, the Mughal Emperor Akbar paid a visit with Raja Man Singh, his Mansabdar, Raja Man Singh, to Vrindavan. And after that, he gave kind of his approval to build four grand temples, in Vrindavan, and out of red sandstone. All these temples are made out of red sandstone, and red sandstone during the Mughal times were used to build either the Mughal forts or their offices or key government structures. So Akbar agreed to give red sandstone for the construction of these temples, and the first temple to come up, of course, was Madan Mohan Ji, followed by Govind Dev Ji, and then Gopinath Ji. We will take, and when we go into the details of temple architecture, we will discuss Govind Dev Ji in little more details. And because the structure was a wonder, even today it is wonderful, in a depleted state. The flight of these deities, all these key deities of Gauriya Vaishnav Tattva, what Vajranav had created were in Vrindavan. until 1669, 1670. And this is the same time when all the flight of deities took place, because Aurangzeb issued a farman to destroy the Katra Keshavdev, or the Sri Krishna Janmabhoomi, and along with that fell all the temples of the Vraj Mandal, for that matter. So all these temples bore the brunt. Rajputs, who formed a key administrative administrative team of the Mughals, had actually informed the press, and there are amazing stories of how these deities traveled through treacherous routes and then reached Jaipur over a span of next 3 to 4 decades. So, for example, the Govind Dev Ji, from Vrindavan to Jaipur, it took 44 years for Govind Dev Ji to reach, because they did not take him through the main route. Otherwise, the Mughals would have plundered the deity. The resilience, the sacrifices, the courage, the hardship. Tears comes to my eyes when I read those stories, when I read those descriptions, how it was transported, how people saved, and wherever he went there, another temple came up in his honor. And those temples are even there today. It's amazing. And Dr. Meenakshi Jain, Padma Awardee, historian Dr. Meenakshi Jain, she covers these stories to a great extent, not in all the stories in so much of details, but to a great extent, in her book, Flight of Deities and Temples. So if you get a chance, do read these books, because the flight of deities from Vraj, the mass flight, I would say, the mass flight, all these deities went out of Vraj in 1669-70. It has been covered in a book very aptly, although not much in great details, but to a reasonable extent, because that book speaks of the other flights, like the flight of Sri Jagannath, also from the Jagannath temple, for that matter. And he flew out so many times. So, as I said, in architecture, we will take Govind Dev Ji temple, who is considered the Maharaj of Vraj. And firstly, this temple, this was a 7-story architecture. The Mughals reduced it to 3-story. There are many folklores and legends that how they stopped destructing. And after destroying, Aurangzeb got a mazar built on top of this destroyed temple, and on the top of the 3rd floor, so that people can climb up and offer their prayers in the mazar. That's what they used to do with so many of our places. And then in 1861, F.C. Grouse, the British collector, who was the collector of Mathura, removed that mazar on top of this opulent structure. So, and that is captured in his own memoirs, the Memoirs of Mathura by F.C. Grouse. So that is another important part of history that we come to know. The image was excavated by Sri Rup Goswami, one of the key 6 Goswamis of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, somewhere between 1525 to 1536. It was a yogi Shakti Peeth of Yogmaya Devi, so one of the Devi Vigrahas which Vajranath had created. I did not touch upon that part purposely, because that's another part of story, or the history for that matter. And the hillock from which it came out is called Gomatila. Now, there's a beautiful, this piece of history is extremely beautiful, because the way it was discovered from Gomatila, Rup Goswami was searching for Govind Dev Ji as per instruction of Sri Chaitanya, and he was searching everywhere, but he was not getting any information. So one day he sat down beside Yamuna, and he was crying in despair. Then from somewhere, a Gop Valak, a cowherd boy, appears in front of him from nowhere, black complexion, around 13, 14 years of age, and says that, I have seen a tila where the cows go and shed their milk over there every day. So you should go and check there. I think you can, get this thing. And then he disappeared. In a fraction of a second, Rup Goswami understood who he was, and he ran to Gomatila. And he located Gomatila and called the Vrajavasis with all kinds of, excavating material, and they excavated, and then came up the beautiful deity of Govind Dev Ji. The first temple, or a temporary shed, I would say, was, put in place by Maharaj Bhagwan Singh, father of Man Singh, in 1561, and the current architecture that you see, which was built and commissioned by Raja Man Singh with help from Mughal Emperor Akbar, and was conceived in 1565. The temple was commissioned in 1590, which was the 34th year of Akbar's reign. And people, I know many people may not like because I'm mentioning Akbar, but there are Mughal farmans. There was a Mughal farman on the temple, which describes who had built this, how many bighas of land were given in name of the temple, how the red sandstone. There are proper inscriptions available today, and this is documented history, archaeological evidence based on which this history has been done, and this has been vetted by all historians and archaeologists, so please don't feel bad about it. And the flight of deities, as I mentioned, they all moved down in 1669, 70. There is a Vrinda Devi Vigraha, which was also built by Vajranath, whose temple is also there in this premises. And the temple took almost 12 years of construction. And in one word, even today, to describe the temple is poetry on stone. That's an architectural marvel. As you can see, the inscription on the temples states the commissioning, the donation, the details of the sculptors and the architects who commissioned the temple. It was a 7-story temple, a huge one, and the most opulent structure that was built in those 600 to 700 years of Islamic rule, which North India went through. The only temple which came up actually of such opulence, and 7-story brought down to 3-story by the Mughals. And again, some of the, it's a Rajput Gharana, mix of Rajput Gharana, where you see the jharokas, the open arcades, the pointed arches, the vaulted domes. And if you can see the pictures, you can understand what I'm speaking about. There was a 150 kg diya, which was always Akhanda diya, I would say, used to burn on top of the temple. And it was this Akhanda diya which caught the attention of Aurangzeb from Agra fort. And that is when he saw that this diya was there, and he was furious. And that is when he issued the farman to destroy the Katra Keshavdev and all temples of Vraj. As I said, the Mazar was removed in 1861 CE by F.C. Grouse, the district collector of Mathura, from the temple top. Currently, this temple is ASI protected, and as I said, that 44 years through treacherous route from Vrindavan to Jaipur. So in Jaipur, it was first there in what we say that there was a separate temple built up in Jaipur, which is called Kanak Vrindavan, or from Kanak Vrindavan, it moved to the Jaipur City Palace. And he is Govind Dev Ji is now the Nagar Devta or Ishta Devta of Jaipur. So if you go to Jaipur and do visit Jaipur City Palace to have a darshan of Govind Dev Ji. And as I said, that these pictures are speaking for itself, and such opulence. And it's an Indo-Islamic style. And because if you see these arches, these are the Islamic arches typically that you see. And but majority of the temple, apart from these arches, are all Nagara style of architecture of Bharatiya temple traditions. And the mix of the jharokas, which you typically see in Rajasthan, the jharokas, the open arcades, this arches you can see. And this is a beautiful inside view that I have captured, of course. And as you can see, F.C. Grouse rightly defined it as the most impressive edifice of Hindu art that has ever been produced, at least in Upper India. And that is what I was saying, that the most opulent structure to come up on the 600, 700 years of Islamic rule over in North India. Coming to the Katra Keshavdev or Sri Krishna Janmabhoomi, this is the current structure or the current picture that you see. A little bit of history or historicity on Krishna Janmabhoomi. The first structure, as I mentioned, was brought up by Vajranath, Maharaj Vajranath in 3000 BCE. The second structure of the temple was built by Chandragupta Vikramaditya of the Guptas in 400 CE, and this was destroyed by Mahmud of Ghazni in 1071 CE. And I will come to little in the next slide that what Ghazni's historians are writing about Mathura and the destruction, and you can understand what we are speaking of. And it is this structure which has found its mention by Huan Sang in his text in the 7th century CE, because Huan Sang had visited it. The third structure, as per copper plates discovered from the site during excavation, mentions of a third structure which was brought by Maharaj Jajja Jat ruler of the Vijaypal Deva, within 100 years of destruction by Mahmud of Ghazni. Again, this temple was desecrated by Sikandar Lodi around 1520 CE, and this temple was visited by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Vallabhacharya. So, and the final or the fourth structure which Aurangzeb brought down was built by Maharaja Veer Singh Bundela of Bundelkhand or Orcha. And Veer Singh Bundela ji had donated 81 tons of gold to this structure in making this structure. And it was, and since he was a very good friend of Jahangir, so it was built under the patronage of Jahangir. And again, an opulent structure of red sandstone, which obviously cannot be found today, and finds its mention of a few British and French travelers like Tavernier, as I said. And each of these finds are supported by archaeological evidences, manuscripts, ancient texts, and as late as the findings by Alexander Cunningham, the first director of Archaeological Survey of India, and by F.C. Grouse, of course. See, if anybody is interested to understand in greater details the Sri Krishna Janmabhoomi, they should read the book of Dr. Meenakshi Jain, Vasudev Krishna and Mathura. So let's get into the description of what Ghazni destroyed. In the words of Udbi, the court historian of Sabakti Jin was a Mahmud of Ghazni's family, his forefather, and Udbi traveled with Mahmud of Ghazni to Mathura. And as mentioned, and before I do that, it will be very pertinent to mention that the Marxist historians referred a lot of history, lot of data points from the Persian and Arabic texts, but they surprisingly go silent whenever these Islamic marauders have actually suffered a loss. And there is a parallel reference to that being found in the inscriptions or manuscripts available. Let's say for Nafsari inscription, Aihole inscription. There are so many inscriptions. I mean, these two are the premise where Pulakesi defeats Gori, I think, if I correctly remember. Yeah. So, and then in what did they say? That this line, that he, means Mahmud of Ghazni, sees a building of exquisite structure which the inhabitants declared to be the handiwork of not of men but of jinn. They mention it's jinn, but people, they used to say that devtao ne banaya hai. Then the second one, on the two sides of the city were thousands of irons with bars of iron. And what does the Sultan say? The Sultan writes that if anyone wished to construct a building equal to it, he would not be able to do so without expending 100 million dinars, and the work would occupy 200 years. Let me tell you that even the descriptions which are found of the last temple which Aurangzeb brought down, built up by Orcha's king, Maharaj Bundela. The statue of Sri Krishna was 15 feet tall with sapphires, red sapphires as his eyes, that kind of descriptions are found. So I will not spend much time over here because it's going to get lengthy, because the descriptions are extremely extremely heart-wrenching, I would say, and one cannot keep his emotions under check when you go through them. And of course, the genocides perpetrated was unimaginable. As late as Abdali in 1757, even he committed a genocide. We'll come to that also. The magnificent structure, as I said, was mentioned by Chinese traveler Huenseng, who traveled across India and was especially and when we visited during Harshavardhan or Kannauj of, the king of Kannauj, present-day Kurukshetra. So before going into this, on the genocides perpetrated, I will just quote one example. As late as 1757, before the Third Battle of Panipat, every winter Ahmed Shah Abdali used to visit India. And in one of those in 1757, when the Battle of Gokul happened, Gokul was saved by the Naga Sadhus. And after getting defeated, the Durrani forces being defeated by the Naga Sadhus and their valor, they fell upon the unsuspecting people of Vrindavan on the day of Holi, when everybody was celebrating. Pilgrims, residents, children, all playing. Nobody had any inkling of such an attack. And the Islam, the Afghan forces fell on these unsuspecting civilians. They butchered them. The Yamuna was red, and if I read the descriptions mentioned in Tariq-e-Firishta by another Persian historian, Firishta, and and there are some other Persian texts also. I don't remember the names, but I've gone through. They say that there was a place where 200 headless torsos of children of 10 years or less was lying. That was the propensity of the genocide that was perpetrated by Ahmed Shah Abdali's forces. Yeah, there are. I mean, in terms of utsavs or festivities, lot many, starting from Janmashtami, Radhashtami, Damodar, the Kartik month. Each one of them is very celebrated in a big, big way. But to me, I think Holi is something which I thought that I should share with people. This one, as I said, there are some 5, 6 elements which make it special. Holi starts from the day of Vasant Panchami, so which makes it a typical of 2 months affair, 2.5 months affair in Vraj Mandal. And what are apart from the normal Holi, the different ones which are there and which people should know as a part of their heritage is Phulo Ka Holi, Gulal Kund Ka Holi, where Holi never stops, the Latmar Holi, ancient sign of women empowerment, I can say, and then Falin Ka Holi, Falin, where Holika Dahan. I'll tell you the story in little details, and there's Dauji's Huranga. So we'll start with, and then of course, this one, the Charukala Nritya. So Mukharai's Charukala Nritya. So we'll start with Mukharai's Charukala Nritya. So Mukharai was the maternal grandmother of Sri Radharani, and it is said that when Radharani's birth came over, and she was so happy that she danced with a cart wheel, bullock cart wheel with lamps placed on it on her head. And over a period of time, this form of art or performing art, I would say performing heritage art, became a tradition in Vraj Mandal, and now it is known as Mukharai's Charukala Nritya. Okay, where women, as you can see, place their heads on the top of the heads. It's balancing with diyas, and they dance around during this time. Phulo Ka Holi, where it's celebrated with flowers all across Vraj. I'm not getting into too much of detail in the interest of time. And Gulal Kund Ka Holi, where Sri Krishna and Radharani did not want to stop playing Holi, and there is a kund there where Holi is played throughout the year, it is believed. So it's called Gulal Kund Ka Holi. Then Dauji's Huranga. Now, if you can recollect, one of the key deities made by Vajranath was the Baldev, and the Baldev deity is probably one of those last deities which still survives, and and is in Vraj Mandal. So it is located in a village called Baldev, 10 kilometers from Mathura, and